How is everyone? For AP Art and Design, we are about to begin art history oil studies. To begin this process, you first need to familiarize yourselves with the colors on your palette and also how to best use oil in order to complete these paintings within a 10-minute time frame. The visuals for the demo that you're about to see were recorded in the fall of 2019, but the demo has been redubbed in order to make the information more pertinent to our process now. So let's flash back 1 year to begin this demo. All right, you've all been issued palettes that look relatively like this one. I'm just going to take you a tour on the palette set before you in terms of the names of the colors, and you'll be able to figure out the properties on your own, but just to acclimate you a little bit. So beginning with this color, this is called Payne's Gray. It is more of a neutral than anything you've been presented with in either acrylic or in watercolor, but this will provide you with a very deep dark and a nice neutral base. Up here we have Raw Umber, which is the darker of the two browns, and Burnt Sienna, which is the more orange and lighter of the two browns. Those are the oil versions of the two browns that you're issued in the watercolor class. I believe this color is called Deep Red. I'm not 100% sure because I don't have the label listed right in front of me, but I'm pretty sure this is Deep Red. And here we have Cadmium Red, which is the more orange of the two reds. Cadmium Yellow, which is the darker of the two yellows and is a little bit more orange, and Cadmium Yellow Pale, which is the lighter of the two yellows. This light blue here is called Cerulean. It's slightly more greenish. It's nice and light. French Ultramarine, which is, of course, a blue, and Prussian Blue, which is a nice dark blue and will provide you with a green. In the center here you have Titanium White. All of these colors do pose a bit of a health concern, as always, I recommend that you wear gloves while you're painting because there is a health risk involved. I also highly recommend that you wash your hands and your skin immediately following use of any of these materials. I suggest that you begin this process by dipping your brush into the water. You could lightly activate your colors. I wouldn't overdo it, but just in the interest of preserving their longevity, you have to wear gloves. There's titanium in a couple of these colors. This is the real stuff. I'm going to use Burnt Sienna, and when I use the oil, I'm just going to dip into the side of the color, not into the main portion of the paint. The reason for doing this is that this will enable me to control the amount of paint that is on my brush, and in the layering process, it will ensure that my lower layers and my colors aren't interfering with the application of the upper layers. There will be an influence, but hopefully not an interference if you're using the appropriate amount of paint at this stage. I'm going to use the angles and proportions to transcribe the source material, which in this case is a mirror, and bring that down to my painting. I'm going to quickly sketch myself out, and I'm trying to keep this layer as light and as thin as possible so that, again, I'm not having interference later on in the layering process. I did my line drawing in Burnt Sienna, very, very thin, very watered down. I'm going to apply an underpainting with that same color, and this time what I'm going to do, instead of working with the thin, crisp lines that I'm gaining from the brush, I'm applying the lighting in more broad strokes. I can either approach the shadows or the midtones, or just unifying and thinking in terms of preserving highlights and having midtones and shadows all included in one layer. But you're going to begin at the top of your painting and work your way down towards the bottom so that you're really thinking in terms of traveling from top to bottom to make sure that your lighting is consistent and blocking out sections of light and dark, not thinking about individual line, thinking about carving out shadow. In abstract terms, this method is called vertical attachment, where you are beginning with one color at the top of your image and dragging it down to the bottom to ensure unity. Even though we're using paint, you really want to think of this in terms of sketching. Even if you've never used oil, you don't need to be afraid or intimidated by it. If you know how to paint in other types of media, you're going to know how to paint in oil. There's a learning curve to understanding the drying properties and the layering process and the texture and thickness of the paint, but otherwise, you're still painting. So you don't have to tense up and be overwhelmed or intimidated or think that you're not going to be any good at it. You still should have your sensibility for lighting and form and color. Don't psych yourselves out. I'm going to mix a darker color now, base it in my burnt sienna, but begin to block out deep shadows. I'm not going to mix any kind of traditional skin tone or what I think my sweater color is supposed to look like. I've established a mid-tone in my underpainting. Now I'm going to place extreme darks, and after that you will see me place extreme lights. So I'm basically working with 3 colors at this standpoint to establish light, middle, and dark. I just used Payne's Gray and burnt sienna. That looks like my dad in the 80s. I'm going to water this down. I'll still achieve the same dark, but I just want to control how much paint I'm using at this stage so that I don't end up fighting against it in future layers.
Because I'm kind of working with the oil so watery, this is really a wash underpainting, so to speak. And again, just thinking in terms of sketching. I just want to achieve lighting. It's almost, for those of you who have taken watercolor, it's almost like those faces that we did when everybody posed in class. Really, it's like you're taking off large pieces and gradually finding the details, so blocking out large planes here. The wonderful thing about oil is that as you kind of drag the brush over the surface, you're picking up whatever paint is beneath it, and you're also losing the amount of paint that's on the brush as you go along. So this underpainting is starting to kind of come alive a little bit. All right, so get more of a mid-tone. I'm going to dip into my white here, introduce some red so that I have a little bit of saturation, maybe some cadmium yellow hue. You can use a palette knife if you want to slice and mix your colors that way. It's a little saturated. Also, I'm going to want to watch out for my hues or values. That's going to end up being way too similar to the ground color. All right, once again, I'm going to start up at the top where I might find some of these highlights, and the oil is going to allow me to pick up some of the colors beneath. And again, you're just sketching. This is a really large brush for the size, the scale that I'm working on. Now we're getting some highlights and some actual carving going on. I've done this very monochromatic. I haven't distinguished between the color of the sweater, the color of the shirt, the color of the tie, that sort of thing.
So that's all for this demo. As always, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to email me. Continue to wash your hands, wear a mask, practice social distancing, and keep yourselves and your family safe. See you soon.